In this video, let's learn about the HTTP GET method. Sometimes the method in HTTP protocol is also called verb. So the HTTP GET method sometimes is called HTTP GET verb. And the purpose of this HTTP GET method is to retrieve information from the server. So we have this application that we wrote previously. And if we run this application again, we get this result. So you can see that the purpose here is to see what is the method, what is the URL, right, and what are the headers. So this is the seeing purpose. Right? We're getting the information from the server and displayed in the browser. So we have to be clear about the purpose first. Right? That's the purpose of the GET method. Again, let's run this in developer tool. Let's go to this request and then let's click on this raw and we can see the actual raw HTTP request here. We have this GET method. We have this / as the path, which is the URL. So the combination between the method and the URL is typically used for routing purpose. And if you still remember what I meant by routing, right? I mentioned in one of the first videos that routing is the action of mapping from the HTTP request to a particular endpoint handler. So in this video, let's use the method and in combination with the URL to actually do something. Let's jump back to Visual Studio. We already mentioned that this middleware will be the middleware that any request will be route to, right? Any request will execute this particular delegate function here. Now, I can have some decision making based on the information provided in the HTTP request. So for example here, I can do some basic routing. If context.request.path, which is the URL, right? If that starts with root. So if it's the root, then we can do this. And if we want to do another if statement here. So if it starts with /employees, we want to output all of the employees. Right now, I don't have an employee list. So I'm going to just write this. I'm going to say employee list. So this decision is based on the path. But where is the decision making based on the method? Do something like this. Context.request.method. So if this method is the GET method, then we are going to perform the following actions. We're going to decide whether we're going to execute this or execute this based on the path. You can see that we're making decisions based on the combination of the method and the path. All right, let's execute this. And by default, we're hitting the root. And that's why we're seeing this. But if I go to employees, then I see this employee list. Currently it's hard-coded, right? And if I go to anywhere else, I get nothing, right? I get nothing because anywhere else means that there's nothing in the response, nothing in the response. Now to code a proper employee list, let's create some in-memory repository. Right? I'm gonna copy and paste some code so that you don't have to watch me writing it. First of all, I'm gonna define an employee class and I'm gonna paste it right here. So the employee class has simple 4 different properties: ID, name, position, and salary. And then I have this constructor defined in order to help me to initialize employee. Right? And then I can define the in-memory data store. And I'm gonna call it repository. So I'm gonna copy and paste this right here. So this is a static class and it has a static private member here. And this is basically storing the list of employees. And by default, I have 3 different employees instantiated. And then I have a public method here to help me to get all of the employees. So very simple in-memory data store defined right here in the program.cs file. Okay, so then I can come over here. So instead of using this hard-coded employee list, I can then get the employee first. So employees by using the in-memory data store here, right? The employee repository for some reason. Oh, okay, so it has some spelling mistakes here. So employee, coming over here and paste this over here. Okay, so then I can call this public method here, get employees, and this is a static method. So it's gonna give me all of the employees. Now I can do for each. So for each employee in employees, then over here, I'm going to output all of the employees. So I'm gonna copy this and paste it over here. And then I'm going to remove this part, and then replace this key with employee.name. And I'm also going to output the position. So employee.position. And then let me delete this line. We don't need it anymore. Okay, so this is a relatively useful example here. If you hit the default root location, root path, then we are spitting out all of the headers, okay, basically the anatomy of the HTTP request for learning purpose. If you're hitting the employees URL here, and if this is a get method, then we're calling the get employees public method in the in-memory data store here. And then we get all of the employees. We're going to spit out all of the employees in the response so that they can be displayed in the browser. All right, let's run this and see what's happening. Okay, let me close the previous windows here or tabs here, and then let me go to employees. Now you can see John Doe is an engineer, Jane Smith is a manager, and Sam Brown is a technician. So in this video, what you learned is that the purpose of the get method is to retrieve information, or you can say retrieve data from the server side, right? Whether we're hitting the root URL to display all of the information about the anatomy of the HTTP request, or we're actually retrieving data from the data store, the in-memory data store about the employees. We're getting information from the server. So that's the purpose of the get method. And secondly, what you learn is by simply using combination between the method and the URL, you can implement a very basic routing, and you can call this endpoint. So this is actually the endpoint handling, right? And this is also another endpoint handling, right? And it's just that we are not calling this properly. And we're going to talk about organizing this when we talk about minimal API, right? Minimal API will have similar problems. We have different ways to organize those logic. Right here, these logics are endpoint handling, but they look very messy because everything is together. Anyways, we covered the get method, and we're going to talk about the post method in the next video.